Welcome to Talking Politics, and we're going to talk some real politics and what a lot of people don't like to be talked about this time. I have Jonny McCoy back. He was the attorney that was with us last week and talked about the case that he won. Now we're going to talk about why a case like that ever even comes up. And we have Tuvia Wilkes, business owner that has been on with us before, and we're going to talk something about the corruption that goes on in this city, in this county on a daily basis. We'll be back in a moment. Well, welcome back. We're at our studio in 605C North Kings Highway in Myrtle Beach, and my normal partner, John, has stepped out. He wanted to leave the show to these two people. And why we're here, something that Tuvia and I have hit on before, something we've talked about a little bit with Jonny. There is a corruption in this city, and there is a corruption in this county that is pervasive. And it's the fact that people can break the law, and I'm talking about city officials, I'm talking about police. They know they can break the law, or they can lie about what they did, which is breaking the law when you lie under oath, and they know they will get away with it. And it's the citizens have become so used to this kind of system, I guess we'll call it, for lack of a better term, this corruption, that they're afraid to speak out. In fact, it strikes me that they've been afraid to vote out people that should have been voted out of office. This is where we are. But let's go back to the case we talked about last week to begin with. You had how many police officers lie under oath?
All of them, except for one.
How many was it? Six or so?
But we had 4 in the deposition.
4 in depositions, they lied.
Yes.
Those 4 still have a job.
Correct.
In the police force that they were in.
Yeah, and one of them is in a different police force.
Okay, but they're still operating as police. So now we have people who will get up there and will raise their right hand and put their left hand on the Bible, and they will say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God, or whatever it is they say in that oath, getting sworn in. They break that oath immediately. They've sworn an oath when they got sworn into office to uphold, at least to uphold the Constitution of the state in the United States. They've broken an oath that they took to be in court. Why do we assume that they're not breaking an oath that they took here to uphold the law and to uphold the Constitution? We're allowing criminals to get away with stuff while we're hurting the average person. And that's my take.
You know, when you cross that line, it's like when you're a child and you steal a piece of candy from a candy store, and you get that rush and you're like, am I going to get caught? And then you eat the candy and you're like, God, that was bad, but I got away with something. Then you go back in the candy store and then you up it to a Snickers bar. Then you go back in the candy store, and by the end of it, you're robbing the cash register because you know that nobody gives a damn about what goes on inside the store, and nobody's going to question you about it. So this line that has now been crossed is one of covering up a shooting that paralyzed somebody in a way that is unprecedented, and nothing happened. So what is the next lie? What is the next lie? And who is going to be responsible for it? Because I'm not going to be sitting there thinking, now that this happened to another person or in another way, I'm not going to be sitting there going, I didn't do everything I could because I came on this show, I did my press conference, I beat my head against the wall and on this table saying, look, this is what happened. The rest is up to y'all. What else are we supposed to do, Ms. Wilkes?
Well, I'll tell you, the problem is that the people who steal the candy bar and then move up, they tell their friends, and their friends go back to the candy store, and then they tell their friends, and that's what's happened in this city. Each one tells the friend, well, nothing's going to happen. You just give him the okay to rent his building, and you just say that this guy can't rent his, because what can happen to you? You're going to get a raise anyway over the year. So, of course, crap runs downhill. So it all starts at the top somewhere. with the police, with these corrupt city officials, with all of them. You can follow it up to the top, which here at the top is the city manager, John Peterson, whom I believe is brought us to 141 empty storefronts in the largest financial expansion. I mean, he's just, there's no price for him to pay. They're politically, they know everyone, where all the skeletons are buried. And because he knows where all the skeletons are buried, no one will throw stones in the glass house. And that's what's happened with the government. It became a glass house, and everyone who works within that government building, nobody's throwing stones. And the one who's suffering are the taxpayers and the normal, everyday working citizen of Myrtle Beach.
But the real thing, though, is now we really need to watch, okay? Because, yeah, we can get up there and we can say, why the hell are we have empty storefronts? And I don't know John Peterson. I didn't deal with him in the lawsuit. But I assume that, you guys are real familiar. But in reality, when you're talking about how dare you not do this, look at this is corrupt, look at this, you're renting this building to this person, you're denying me for no reason at all, it falls on deaf ears because it's only happening to you.
That's right.
But now, $8.5 million, okay, came from somewhere and went out the door of the city of Myrtle Beach.
Came from the taxpayers, came from the citizens. They're always the one that are paying.
So what are you going to do now? Now, y'all, the money just came out of the city of Myrtle Beach to pay for lies. Listen to me. We did not get $8.5 million because they shot Julian Benton. We did not get that because they shot Julian Benton. We got $8.5 million because the entire despicable operation of cover-up, the lies, and all that went into it. If they would have just knocked and announced, or, okay, let's say they didn't knock and announce, went in, and they written statements that said, look, I don't know what happened, we made a mistake, the guy had a gun at his side, he was selling weed, blah, blah, blah. No way did we get even close to where we were at, okay? But they covered it up, and they continued fighting it all the way to the end, and they paid $8.5 million. So now, what's the reaction going to be?
I will tell you the reaction. No one quite understands. The cover-up is always worse than the crime.
Always.
It's always worse than the crime. And so what they're doing now is there's so many lawsuits against the city of Myrtle Beach, I think 15 or 17 right now, and they will be settled. And there will be no accountability. The same as there's no accountability to the police officers with the Benton case. They just take the taxpayers' money and pay. And now they want $7 million to pay an attorney who's been working a little bit on this, the lawsuit against the city for the money they stole from the county at Market Commons and for the school or whatever. And so it's now tens and tens of millions of dollars and more lawsuits and more lawsuits and more lawsuits. And they never pay because they never actually get into the courtroom. They always settle. They always settle because it's not their money. And they get to go to lunch with each other, and they get to be big shots, and they get to talk about who they like and who they don't like. They poison people like crazy. They pick out people they don't like, and they blackball them. And so they sit at lunch, and they know who they're going to help, who they're going to hurt. And they know that when it comes to the court, they're going to settle because they don't pay a penny. And they never confront the cameras. They're always settling.
And on that point, we got to take a break. Let our sponsors talk. We'll be back.
Warning signs. Throughout our lives, we learn their importance and what they mean. Flashing lights alert you of construction on the highway. A loud siren lets you know about a fire drill in your office. Cell phones can even inform you when bad weather is headed your way. However, a lot of people aren't familiar with the warning signs for the fourth leading cause of death in the United States: stroke. A stroke can happen in a moment's notice, so it's important to detect the warning signs. If you spot facial drooping, sudden arm weakening, or trouble speaking, like slurred speech, then it's time to call 911. These signs can come on suddenly, so get help immediately if you identify any of these signs in yourself or someone around you. the longer a stroke goes unnoticed, the more damage is done. That's why it is important to act fast. To learn more signs and symptoms of stroke, go to the American Heart Association at strokeassociation.org.
American libraries have more books than any other countries on Earth. But the US has 5th lowest literacy rate in the developed world. 2 out of 3 haven't read a book in over a year. You can travel all around the world when you step into the library. Expand your horizon, navigate your life. Unplug, unwind, read.
Well, welcome back. I'm here with Jonny McCoy, a local attorney, and Tuvia Wilkes, a local business owner, and we're talking about the corruption that goes on around here. And we mentioned, excuse me, to start with, the $8.5 million that the city of Myrtle Beach is responsible to Mr. Benton for, the lawsuit that you just won. You went to other lawsuits, and there are many.
Many.
There's considerable lawsuits against the Horry County Sheriff's Department for those deaths that they had.
The 2 women.
Was it 2 years ago? Or
for the flood.
The flood in 16, or 18, I'm sorry. There's a Skydive Myrtle Beach case where they ran a legitimate business out of the North Myrtle Beach Airport just because they didn't want them there. And we're talking not just a skydive operation, but an operation was owned and operated by veterans of the 82nd Airborne Division. These weren't some guys that took a few lessons someplace and decided to open up a business. These are guys that went through jump school and in a couple of cases actually jumped.
Yeah.
And if they don't like you, they go after you. In the city of Myrtle Beach, and there's a lawsuit that you're involved in.
They don't only go after you. They go after you and they make fun of it. They love it because
they laugh at you.
Well, to them it's personal. It's like they get to play Monopoly with other people's money and other people's lives. They never invest. If Peterson knows so much about business, why he doesn't open a business? Because he's a leech. He's a parasite off city taxpayers and has been since the day he was born. That's how he's always been in the government system.
Right.
And so this is all he knows to do, and he plays with the government money. It's all monopoly to them, with the city council, with everyone. They don't care because they never pay a price. The same with all these city officials or people from the law enforcement who sometimes break the law, or judges who break the law. There's never a penalty for them. There's always a sweeping under the rug.
Let me tell you what I think could happen going forward, what we need going forward. You know, back when I was in college Republicans and I was a student senator representing the business school, and I worked for Alan Clement. Back in the day when I was in college, I was big into the Republican Party.
Back when you were young.
Back when I was young. But before that, when I was researching and reading Ronald Reagan books and stuff like that, people were really talking about limited government control. People were really into the idea of limited government. Mm. So what we have now is, I've never seen a time in American history in a city like Myrtle Beach, in a county like Horry County, where everybody drives around with Trump flags and we're all conservative, like myself, and everybody is like, well, let's put more laws into place. Let's make sure that we restrict more stuff. And when you do that, that's when you have armed commandos, as the Court of Appeals called them, armed commandos, showing up at your door with AR-15s and kicking your door down and shooting you and costing taxpayers $8.5 million. That's when you have license issues where you continue getting the city sued over and over again because they won't allow businesses to operate on Kings Highway and stuff like that. Limited government control is a conservative ideology. Why are we continuously saying, let's ban this, let's go after that? They shot Julian Benton over $100 worth of marijuana, executing a warrant. Okay, there's a difference between having it still illegal so they can get inside of people's pockets and then taking it to the next step, which is allowing them to arrest them and take them to jail, which is why I am proposing, and I'll draft it up because nobody's even talking about it. Y'all get me in front of City Council, the blue ticket law. Now, what's a blue ticket law? A blue ticket law is where we tell the city of Myrtle Beach adopts a provision that says, from now on, officers write a fine, a $500 fine. They can still search and pat down and do all the things you need to do for somebody you smell weed on, get into their car, get into their pockets. After you're done doing all that other stuff, you give them a $500 fine and you let them go. You don't arrest them and take them to jail and risk the taxpayers' dollars for the transport. You risk the taxpayers' dollars for having to pay the officers all the administrative crap that they got to do for 4 hours. Then they got to show up for court. The officers got to do all this other stuff. You take away all this liability, and if they'd had that in place, like all the other major cities in America, I mean, down in Miami, they've been doing that for 10 years. They've got it, and people say, well, Myrtle Beach isn't Miami. Well, Myrtle Beach is still a major tourist destination. But what would have happened in the Benton case is the girl would have gotten a little bit of weed on her. They would have searched her. They would have gone through it. They'd have written her a $500 ticket, and then they could have said, "Where'd you get your weed from?" And then they could have pulled Julian over later and written him a $500 ticket. Money, money, money for the city. Less risk for the taxpayers. Okay? What is the harm in that? It protects the police officers, it protects the city's money, and it also makes sure that the citizens don't feel like they're overwhelmed by too much government. Once we start chipping away at all of these restrictions and all of this over-policing and military operations that we have in the city of Myrtle Beach, then we can start getting to a place where we say, we don't have to file lawsuits for civil rights violations. We don't have to file lawsuits for encumbering on our rights, because we've started to now let government do what it's actually supposed to be doing, which is serving us on a limited capacity. Where did that idea fall to the wayside?
Well, it fell hard, because here I don't call them public servants, I call them self-servants, because it's always about self. Always the people here, their friends can get a business license. Their enemies can't. And the restrictions give them the power to help their friends and the power to hurt their enemies. And that's why these so-called Republicans and so-called conservatives here, they want the restrictions because it's about power here. And yes, the city of Myrtle Beach is not, and I love to hear them when they say it, but they're not Miami, they're not
Daytona,
Raleigh.
yeah.
You know how you know? Because there are no empty buildings there. There are no empty buildings in Raleigh. There's no empty buildings in North Myrtle Beach. We know that North Myrtle Beach is not Myrtle Beach because it's the safest city in South Carolina, and Myrtle Beach is the next to the worst safest city. How do we know this with all the restrictions? With all the restrictions here, how are we not the safest? How are we the worst? Because it doesn't work, the restrictions. But it works for them personally, because they get to hurt who they want to hurt. I've heard for 4 years how John Peterson, from council members, from almost every council member in the city of Myrtle Beach, now and before, told me, John Peterson's got to go, John Peterson's got to go. And every year they give him a 5% raise and
another
contract.
That's
and
right.
It's always unanimous. And those same people, I see them and I say, wow, mate, you told me you know this guy got to go. He does, but I don't want to be the one voting. You know what I mean? How do you get to this point?
You know, you don't, first of all, you don't have conservatives here.
You do not. You have people who say
They say they're conservatives. They are self-professed conservatives, but their actions are ridiculous. The man that you mentioned that you worked for, Alan Clemens. What will we remember Alan Clemens for? Two things.
I'll remember that I worked for him.
You'll
He
remember
helped
you
me
worked
out.
for him. As his time in the State House, he's done two things. One, he's talked about building I-73 on the backs of local taxpayers. Number two, he helped institute a tax on the citizens and the visitors in the city of Myrtle Beach to fund a private corporation. You explain to me how that's conservative.
Explain it to me too, Johnny.
Listen, listen. Alan Clements helped me out. All right, y'all ain't gonna twist me on that.
And that's fine. That's fine. But he's not a conservative.
Look, nobody around here is a conservative. I think y'all
Absolutely.
are looking at like maybe the only one or two or three people. Look, but because it's this herd mentality of I want to show up to these rooms and get cheers and get signs for my garage and my parking my parking space. I have a bumper sticker on it. People want to belong in the United States right now. But the problem is true conservatism. We're outcasts. We're saying, look. If you're a bad cop, man, you got to be punished. You're anti-cop? No, I'm not anti-cop. I'm anti-deli guy who lies about how much turkey's in my meat. I'm anti-teacher who lies about what vowel, my son misspoke. I'm anti anybody who lies and thinks that they can get away with it because of the power that they have. I'm anti-lying, I'm anti-deceit, and I'm anti-cover-up because the only thing that's going to unify this country, this city, this room is transparency. Transparency. That's it. If somebody would have stepped forward and said, look, this is what went wrong on the Benton raid, this is what happened, these are the changes we're made, that check never happens.
But how do you get to
And
this
it never
point?
will. Excuse me one second, Tim. I think we better take our break now before we get into something again deep. So we'll be back in a moment.
If you've never been to my restaurant, I'd like to welcome you here because I think we do an excellent job and you'll enjoy the service and atmosphere at Angelo's.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a server at Brothers Grill, and as a server here, I like to make sure everybody has amazing service and good fresh food every single day. We serve lunch and dinner from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., our happy hours from 4 to 7, and we're located on 5900 North Kings Highway. Follow us on Facebook at Brothers Grill Myrtle Beach.
Hey man, I'm on my way to the finest place for everyone to play, where the drinks are cool and the sun is hot, and the Myrtle's Inlet's Marsh Walk.
Enjoy spectacular waterfront dining and live music with breathtaking saltwater marsh views at the Myrtle's Inlet Marsh Walk. Marsh Walk, where the view, the music, and the fun are always free. Marsh Walk, Highway 17 Business, Waterfront, Myrtle's Inlet.
Well, welcome back. We're in our third segment. We're talking about corruption, and we're only doing it in a half hour, and we can't do it in 30 days, but here we are, and you were making a point, Tuvia, right before we went to break.
When you get to a situation that we're in now with Myrtle Beach, to concentrate on here, I mean, you don't have to look any further than a few miles to the south. Surfside Beach is doing so well. You go a few miles to the north, Myrtle Beach is doing so well.
North Myrtle Beach.
And, North Myrtle Beach, and you can see by the contrast how Myrtle Beach, it's the lack of leadership. A woman asked me about purchasing a property from her last night. She's a very well-known person here, and her family was very well known. And I told her, I said, how can I invest a penny into the city again? I said, it's a lawless place. You don't know from day to day what you can sell, when you can sell it, where you can sell it. Look, John, at the super block, we call it the unsuper block here, and we don't know why, but they took a poor girl, a veteran, and the same city manager was in charge, and you can't sell alcohol there because it's very bad for you to sell alcohol at the super block. But that girl's gone. Now a friend or someone they know comes in, and boom, the same city manager is running it. Now you can have alcohol there because they like the person.
They actually put the law down to not allow alcohol sales in the superblock after they ran her out, okay? And then changed it when they heard that
Somebody they know.
Yeah, a friend was starting up a microbrewery and wanted to be in the superblock, so we changed the law back.
And this is a fact. I mean, you can't run from it.
You've
And
got another
nobody's gonna say
situation
nothing.
that affects you directly. Well, a lot of it affects you
Yeah.
directly. But you think about what they've done. They put a special section in Ocean Boulevard. And that's because it's supposed to be a family-friendly zone. They were going after CBD oil. You remember that? Stopping the CBD oil.
They're still going after
They're
CBD.
still,
Yeah.
Except that,
The only city in the world.
every other place in the city, you see CBD oil being sold all over the place. But they put this zone in this one little section on Ocean Boulevard, not because they wanted to stop the sale of CBD oil. It's because they wanted to run the merchants that have been in business there for a long time out of business.
Yeah.
And that is as unconstitutional as you can get. You got to have equal application of the law, or at least the 14th Amendment used to tell us that.
Well, I get that. But again, you're running into this issue of conservatives versus social conservatives who say, I don't like the weed plant. I don't want hippies running around. That lady on the super block, she was having hip hop in there. There's a difference between true limited government. Don't let it infringe on anybody. Don't let it infringe on somebody who's playing hip hop. Don't let it infringe on somebody who's selling marijuana-looking towels. The First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, they apply, and I don't give a damn what the hell's going on behind the door. That's true conservatism
That's exactly
at
right.
its
It's true.
core. But people have lost that. They're wearing the hats, they're wearing the bumper stickers, and I am too. Look,
They're certainly out there professing, I am a conservative.
I support the cause more, just as much as anybody. But when it all boils down, you have to say, am I for limited government control, which is what the backbone of the party's for, or am I for this social ideology where we nitpick the 1950s era and say we want to make sure that this stays here, and we're splitting our party, and we're gonna continue. We may be in for an awakening, but we're splitting the party, and either we come together and we unite under the common cause and the common core of limited government control first and foremost. And then everything else.
I say amen to this. But it begins, like Paul says every week, it begins with the voters. And the voters,
we got to turn these clowns out.
Open your eyes and see. You've got a city a few miles down that's the safest, and this is the worst. And both are saying that they're family friendly. You understand? They use these hook words. The same with conservatism.
Yeah.
They
Exactly the
use,
same.
They use it as a hook word.
Exactly.
The same as a woman who gets people drunk for a living tries to pass a law that you can't have CBD, and she uses the family friendly as a hook word. And I had them.
But it is family friendly to drink beer. We know that because she told us.
Well, to certain kinds of beer.
Exactly.
But we at planning, I told them Google up family friendly topless bars. Google it up. And the lady that was running the planning, she said, you know what? Yeah. She Googled it up, and it comes up thousands of places in America that are family-friendly adult entertainment. So these are just hook words that they use. What it is, you have to treat everyone decent and fair, but it begins at the top. You cannot change Myrtle Beach if you have the same people there that are saying that the city manager is the worst, but give him a raise the next day. Because the hypocrisy is just so insane, Johnny.
So what we've done is we've raised the flag, and the flag says we're here. Okay, I brought in these big tanks. They were the guys who I brought in: Burton Craig, Brad Bannon, Paul Smith, and Narendra Ghosh. These guys are real freedom fighters. You want to talk about guys who weren't in it for the money? They don't. They still. These guys see what's going on here. They're always, I'm connected with them, talking about $300 fine for the guy yesterday for mishandling all those kids' cases. We are going to continue tagging this area for civil rights violations, one after the other, until somebody turns around and finally says, well, we got to do something. That's what it's just going to boil down to. And that's the only thing. And the sad part is I don't want to funnel money out of the city. I don't want to funnel money out of people around here. But that's the only fight in the arcade right now. That's the only game in town, is going in the ring, slugging with them over all this crazy stuff that's going on around here, and walking out of there with $8.5 million, because nothing else is changing. I mean, they wrote a statement, you know, and I'm happy that they wrote a statement, the city of Myrtle Beach, and you know, the way that they've handled it after the settlement was over with. But now it's on the police department to handle their own officer, and it's up to DEU and all these other departments to handle the officers within, you know, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do if these officers are involved in a big drug bust? What are you going to do if they're a witness there? You know,
you get the taxpayers' money, and you take their money, and you keep your friends in place. That's the way it's done here, Johnny. They keep the same people in place because it's their friend. How do you think you get promoted in the city of Myrtle Beach? You got people there running a development corporation who was a receptionist at the city, but who made a friend, and she's in charge of a development corporation for the city. What background does she got? Check it and see.
Yeah.
Have no background, and no one's going to stand up because they went to lunch with her. You understand? So now she's part of it. You understand? You've got guys that they're in the city that literally don't know anything what they're doing, but hey, he was his friend, and he went to school at Myrtle Beach High School with the mayor's husband. You understand? So he can do anything he wants to do, Johnny. It's not like that. It's to the point of really to everyone in the city is at the cliff's edge.
And we gotta go. Our time is up. And again, it starts with voting these clowns out of office. We have been through the city election where they refused to do that. We have a county election coming up now. I understand that there's probably going to be opposition to all 5 county councilmen that are up for re-election this time. Something to think about. On that note, I'm going to have to say goodbye. Thank you so much for coming.
yes, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to take that time with you. Thank you for coming. We'll be back next week.